Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and today we welcome back Michael Connelly. He is the Executive Director of the United States Justice Foundation. He's also a constitutional attorney and also a U.S. Army veteran. Michael, nice to have you back. How you doing, my friend?
Doing fine. Thank you for having me, Perry.
Yeah, good to see you. Hey, listen, before we get into this VA thing, what's your take on how we are handling this Boston bomber as to whether or not he's being charged properly?
Well, he hasn't been charged yet with everything he should be charged with, but that's standard procedure. They file charges just on anything they can right at the beginning. Hopefully there are going to be multiple charges against him, and hopefully they'll be going for the death penalty. But, you know, there's a lot of concerns out there about why this happened in the first place, why the FBI dropped the ball on the older brother, and why the brother was allowed to stay in the country when he should have been deported. You know, this was part of the politically correct Obama approach to jihadists. You don't want to offend anybody. Well, that gets Americans killed.
Certainly does. Now he is being looked at or handled as a criminal and not as an enemy combatant. Is that correct in your thinking?
Well, it pretty much has to be correct because of the Constitution. The fact is that he is a naturalized American citizen, right, and as such, he's entitled to his constitutional rights. If he was not a naturalized citizen and they were not charging him as an enemy combatant, I'd be very upset.
Is there any problems now by being so long and giving him his Miranda rights?
Well, I think they have enough evidence against him without using anything he might have said. Eric Holder changed the situation with Miranda rights. The exception was originally to allow police to ask questions from somebody they just arrested about, like, where's your gun? Is there a victim? Where is the person? Are they hurt? And this sort of thing. And then Eric Holder says, well, we're going to extend that from a few minutes to 48 hours. So it's questionable whether anything they got from him can be used in court against him. But hopefully they got some kind of information they can use to find other terrorists and find out who his connections were to foreign nationals, which I think there were connections.
Well, there certainly be some ball dropping with the FBI and the State Department and having some kind of a background on this guy and not following through with it.
Well, there's no question about it. I mean, somebody dropped the ball. They didn't even have the man's correct name in all the agencies. You had various agencies that had information about him. They were not sharing it with other agencies. They weren't talking to each other. This is exactly what the laws were that were changed after 9/11 were designed to do, to make sure that our agencies were talking to each other and sharing the information. Obviously, they didn't. And again, I think this goes to the political correctness approach of the Obama administration. They don't even want to call jihadists what they are. They're terrorists. You know, we have the new director of CIA come out before he was made director and say, we don't want to refer to him as jihadist because jihad is a legitimate practice of the Muslim religion. Well, what's legitimate about killing an 8-year-old in Boston?
Yeah. All right. The other issue that is so alarming to us is what the VA is doing to block vets from owning guns. What's this case all about? Well,
we basically got involved in this about 2 months ago when I wrote an article for my blog because I had got some information on this. And after I wrote the article, it exploded. And in a nutshell, what we have is there's a program in the Veterans Administration, which has been around for a while, called the fiduciary program. And it's designed originally to help elderly veterans who might be suffering from dementia or severe memory loss, who would forget to pay their bills on time. They wouldn't properly handle their VA payments. So the VA would appoint a fiduciary, usually a family member, or if no family member is available, somebody from the outside to take care of this for the veterans. Then in 2007, there was an amendment passed by Congress to the National Instant Background Check list that prohibits people from buying guns who are convicted felons or who are mentally ill and have been diagnosed as a danger to themselves or others. They wanted to make sure that veterans who were in that category got put on this list. And there are veterans out there who are that mentally ill. There's no question about that. But the VA, see, this is supposed to be adjudicated. And the VA decided that under this new law, adjudicated meant they could do whatever they want. So what they're doing is they are sending out letters to veterans, and I've got copies of these letters, saying basically, we have received information that you cannot handle your own affairs because of physical or mental disabilities. Now, physical, I guess, could mean loss of an arm or a leg or some kind of head injury. And then the letter goes on to say that we will appoint a fiduciary to represent you, to handle your affairs. And then, by the way, once we rule you incompetent, you will not be able to own, possess, transport, or buy any firearms or ammunition. And if you do so, you will be subjected to criminal penalties, a felony. And veterans they're getting these letters or have minor PTSD, some of them. Some of them have gone in and said something to the VA like, well, yeah, I lost a buddy in Afghanistan. I'm depressed about it a little bit. Some of them have done nothing at all except say that, yeah, my spouse handles the checkbook. They're even going after the widows. We have a lady up in Virginia that we're going to be representing in one of these lawsuits. And basically, her husband was killed in Vietnam. She's been receiving payments. They ask her at the VA, how do you handle your bills? And she says, it's easy. Everything's automated. It all comes right out of my checkbook. They declared her incompetent. She cannot now purchase firearms. We're estimating 150,000 veterans, not estimated, we know about 150,000 veterans are on the list now of people who cannot buy firearms, and 99.9% of them do not belong. There's no adjudication process. The veterans have no due process of law under this. We're getting horror stories from all over the country, and they just keep growing. And then we ask the VA, through Freedom of Information Act request, to tell us what criteria they're using to declare veterans incompetent because they're not following the law, and what criteria they're using to put them on the background check list. They refused to respond to our request. We filed a lawsuit last week to force them to do so, and we're now working on several class action suits on behalf of veterans all over the country because it's just totally out of hand, and it seems to be a deliberate test target of veterans to see if they can be put on the background check list, denied their Second Amendment rights. And these are America's heroes. These are the people who fought for us to defend our rights that are now being denied.
Unbelievable. Now, has any veterans been charged with having a firearm when they've been told not to have one?
We haven't seen any of that yet, but we have seen situations where veterans have had their homes raided and their firearms confiscated. And in one case, somebody else, again, up in Virginia that we're going to be representing, they actually raided his home, and some doctor from the VA had called this man, and he got some kind of bizarre answering machine message, which the guy had actually left for a friend of his he knew would be calling. And so they had his home raided. He had no history of mental illness, no history of PTSD. His injuries were physical that the VA was treating him for. And they took him in for a psychiatric examination for 3 days, didn't hold him after that, found out he was okay, returned him to his home, but in the meantime, they will not return his weapons. So the confiscation part of it, that's starting to happen now.
So the VA is actually raiding homes? I mean, they're now a police agency?
Well, they have local police with them, but the VA does have their own police department. And, so they do handle things like this and can handle things like this, but they use the local authorities too. But the bottom line is this man, no constitutional rights, no due process, just take his weapons, keep his weapons, simply we think because he's a veteran who has weapons. And if you think about it, who are the most dangerous people to tyranny in this country, to defend us against tyranny, the strongest people? Yeah. That's the veterans. There are 21 million of us, and we all took an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution.
All right. So, first of all, any congressional response?
Well, there has been an attempt in Congress, because this has been going on for a while. This really accelerated during the Obama administration. Our timeline shows it really started happening to a great extent about 3 years ago. And last year in the Senate, there was an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act introduced that would have stopped this. And the White House opposed it, and the amendment was defeated. Now, Richard Burr, a senator from North Carolina, recently, within the last month, has filed a new bill called the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act, which is designed to stop this from happening. But again, the White House is opposing it. In the Senate, we're going to have the Democrats come out and oppose it for the most part. So the chances of it passing are slim and none. That's why at the Justice Foundation, we're prepared to file suits. And of course, we do not charge these veterans for anything. They don't have to pay us any expenses or attorney's fees. We're looking for attorneys around the country to volunteer to help us or reduce it or work at reduced rates. And we're looking for people to donate to help us finance these lawsuits. So people can go to usjf.net to find out more about what we're doing and find out how they can help. We also need to hear from any veterans out there. We've heard from a lot, but any of you who are being affected by this, go to usjf.net, send an email to me, or leave a phone message. It may take a week or two to get back to you because we're being inundated, but we will talk to you, and if we can, we will represent you.
All right. Again, that's usjf.net is the website to get a hold of Michael's organization. And if you are a veteran and you've received this letter, let him know right away. And if you need representation, let him know right away. So, Michael, the short end of this, where is it going to go? What do you think will happen here?
Well, I think that ultimately we're going to prevail in court because I think, one, they're being denied their Second Amendment rights. Number two, this being done without due process of law. We may take a while to do this litigation because we're a class action suit. Those are time-consuming and very expensive, but we want to make sure that all the veterans in the country are protected. Because if we take a local lawsuit, file in one state, and you win in federal court, unless it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, it may not be applied in other states. And some of the states are doing things like this, too. We have one person up in Ohio we're representing who was denied a concealed weapons permit. He's a veteran, not because of, because at one point he had a social worker, not a psychiatrist, have one meeting with him to discuss PTSD. And for that reason alone, Ohio says you cannot have a concealed weapons permit. So it's coming into the states now. It's happening in New York. It's happening around the country. So we've got a lot of litigation that's going to be going on, but we think ultimately we will win.
Thank you, Michael. Keep up the good work, my friend. And again, that's usjf.net if you want to get a hold of his organization. Thanks for what you're doing, and we'll check back with you soon and see how it's going, okay?
Thanks, Perry.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you, Michael. All right, we'll be right back.